Step 7, learn to listen. Now, you'd kind of think that we all know how to listen, but the truth is we don't know how to listen, and specifically to listen for emotions. Now, listening really is a skill that can be taught, and it's a skill that can be acquired. And, sometimes we hear things and we hear people, but we don't really listen. There's no active listening. And this is what's the difference between hearing and listening, because hearing is you can hear a noise, you can hear sound, you can hear music, but listening actually involves you engaging into the conversation, or engaging your brain, your mind, your emotions, your feelings, because active listening is paying attention to what the other person is saying. There was a study not so long ago that showed that most teenagers cause, or should I say, the biggest cause of suicide amongst teenagers was because they felt that no one listened to them. Because teenagers go through such a hard time, all those emotions, all those hormones, they don't, they're in transition. They're not children anymore, but they're not adults anymore. They then go through that stage where they start separating from their parents. The parents start acting out because they feel they need to control their children. They need to control their teenagers. They become fearful. So there's so much that goes on with teenagers. And because parents go into the state of fear, they don't listen to them. They don't acknowledge and understand what they're going through. And because teenagers don't feel heard, they don't feel listened to, it often results in them causing suicide, which is a very sad fact. So I want to explain to you a little bit why it's so important for you to learn to listen. And I'll also explain the reason why it's so hard to just listen to somebody. Now, you can also break this into different sexes. So men don't like listening naturally because their brains are wired very differently to female brains. So, when men listen to you, so say for instance, like with my husband and myself, and my husband listens to me and I'm maybe just moaning or complaining or expressing myself, his brain goes into fixing mode. So it's very hard for him to listen because he wants to solve the problem. He wants to fix it. Now, the thing is, though, that when you're expressing your feelings and your emotions, nobody can fix it, can they? And often women just want to be able to express it. And mostly women have this ability that when they talk about their emotions or when they talk about things, they are able to solve their own problems, but they just want somebody to listen. They just want a sounding board. So when women express themselves to men, men want to fix it, and women just want to talk. They don't want men to fix it. And that's why you often get these conflicts in relationships or friendships with men and women, because our brains are wired so differently. Now, listening is purely for the benefit of the speaker. And sometimes why it's also difficult to just listen is because either we are distracted, or what the person is talking about doesn't interest us, so we get bored. So there's many reasons why we don't want to listen. And also human beings always want to be heard. So we're kind of like waiting for the person to finish talking so that we can have a turn to talk about ourselves. Because that's what we all generally want to do. We want to talk about ourselves. We want to express ourselves. We want to talk about our day, what's going on, our hobbies, whatever it is. So we struggle to listen because we're waiting for the speaker to stop talking so that we can talk. And that's when all this conflict starts coming in. But when we understand why listening is so important, and because in a way you're giving the speaker a gift, you're giving them the opportunity to express themselves without you wanting something for yourself in return, it really helps them and relieves them and makes them to feel better, specifically if they're talking about their problems, if they're talking about their emotions. And just to understand that you don't have to fix it, you don't have to solve it, you just need to be that sounding board. And specifically with teenagers as well. And I think, when it comes to parents and educators, when we're dealing with children and when we're dealing with teenagers, because we were a child and because we were teenagers once, a lot of judgment comes into play. A lot of fear comes into play. And so when our children are talking to us, we step into fear. We don't want something to happen to them. And specifically if it happened to us in the past, so if you were, for instance, bullied at school, and your child then starts to express themselves and they tell you something, you step into this save mode. You want to save them. You want to protect them instead of just listening to them and helping them by expressing what they're going through. So that is why we struggle to listen to our children. And also because we judge them, but even that comes from a place of fear, because we know how dangerous the world can be. We know how dangerous people can be. So when they start exploring and when they start experimenting, we go into that judgment phase or we go into that fear phase, instead of just allowing our children to safely be able to explore different avenues in their life and then be able to talk to you about that so that you can guide them and mentor them instead of trying to save them and instead of judging them and instead of shutting them down. So it's very important that when you listen, that you understand it's not about you. It's not for your benefit. It's not about your judgment. It's not about your values. It's not about your preconceptions. It's not about your fear. Listening is for the benefit of the other person. And that's why counselors and therapists like myself have been taught this, that, when somebody tells you something, you never shocked. You never come from a place of judgment, because they need to talk about it and they are not going to feel safe talking to you about their problems and not trust you if you react in a way that is one of shock, fear, and judgment. So just to give you a little bit of a tip here to listen actively is that when you're listening to somebody, you give them your full attention. You're not distracted with your phone. You're not distracted with your laptop. You're not distracted with the TV. Nothing. You give that person your full attention. You have no judgment. You take your fear, your emotions, your preconceived ideas out of it, and you simply give them that gift of listening. But you listen for emotions, because when you start listening for emotions, you then start stepping into empathy. And we're going to be talking about empathy in the next step. Because when you start listening to emotions, it helps you to relate back to them or to relate with them what is going on. So what do I mean by that? So if somebody talks about, I feel scared, or I am scared, or this is what somebody did to me, or this is what somebody said to me, you can then, and so you're listening for those emotions, and then you're saying to them, I can hear you feel scared, or it sounds like you're scared, or it sounds like you're fearful, or it sounds like this is causing you a lot of anxiety. So you are able to say back to them what you think they are feeling. Now, what happens when you do this is that you instantly connect with them, because they think, well, oh gosh, they get me, they understand what I'm going through. Now, if you're not sure, you can actually say to them, it sounds like you feel scared. Are you? That then gives them an opportunity to say, well, no, actually, I feel frustrated. The other way to handle active listening is, I always say to my husband, and this is something that we learned quite early in our relationship when he was always trying to fix things. And I would say to him, before I started a conversation, I say to him, you know what, I just need to talk, and all I need you to do is to listen. I don't want you to fix it. I don't want you to do anything about it. I just need you to be a sounding board for me right now. Can you do that? And then he would go, yes, I can. So you can kind of offer that same service, for lack of a better word, to somebody else. You can say to them, I can just listen, or I'm a good listener if you want to talk about this. So offer it, but then don't give any advice. The next step is where you could say to them, would you like me to give you some advice on that? Would you like me to help you with that? Would you like me to give you some feedback on that? That is what a good listener does. And so this is such an important skill, as I say, specifically when it comes to children, because we tend to treat our children or react to our children and what they're saying in the same manner as what adults reacted and responded to us at the same age. So learn to listen, very, very important. I want you to do the activities, and then once you've done those activities, then come back to step 8, where we will be talking about developing